I'm trying to look at our LinkedIn just to make sure we go live there on the platform. I'm not seeing it on my end yet, but I'm going to get off there so I don't double my audio. So, all right. So we're going to get started here in about 30 seconds. Yep, we're live. So right now we're live on Facebook and LinkedIn and YouTube.
Mine says pre-show.
Pre-show. Yep. It'll go live now. It should be going live now. We got 6 people viewing us. All right. So welcome to our first ever live stream of Inquiring Minds. I'm super excited to be here. I'm Steve Harper, and with me is my awesome co-host, Donna Karlin. Donna, how are you doing today?
I'm great, thank you. And yourself? You're ready to go?
I am ready to go. Our first ever live stream. We have been doing this show for a little bit, but recording on a regular basis and releasing episodes every week. But maybe before we dive into today's topic, maybe give our audience a little bit of an understanding of how this came about and ultimately what the ultimate goal was behind the show.
Well, I met Steve about 15 years ago when we were invited to be authors for the Executive Book blogs. So what was great about that was people were chosen from all over the world to contribute to the conversation around a different book every week. So you could either read the executive book summary or read the full book if you were able to during the week, and then have a conversation around the topic, the theme, etc. And what was amazing was through that, I became friends with people like Steve Harper and Tom Morris and John Spence and some of the other people who have stayed in my life ever since. Steve, I've been very blessed to have met a few times in person, although our relationship has continued virtually over the years. And he invited me onto his podcast. And we were talking one day, and I said, why don't we do this on a regular basis? It's like we could talk forever. And it's so easy. There's nothing that's prepped other than the topic of the day, which I happen to usually bring in the moment. So Steve has no prep whatsoever. And we just dive in. And it's really gotten great response. People are saying that it's impact their lives, their work lives. The perspectives are edgy for the most part, and it helps them view things through a different lens. So I'm thrilled to do this live show with Steve because it gives us an opportunity to go a little bit deeper in conversation, more than just our usual 15 minutes. So I'm very pumped for this.
I am too. Although I gotta say, Donna, we have a couple of people that are having a hard time hearing your audio. So I'm trying to look and see what might be going on back there. Hang on one sec. This should everybody that's actually on Facebook is having a hard time hearing the audio. I'm not sure why that is. Let's see if we can't figure this out. I'm going to bump this up a little bit. Let's see if we can go from there. So if you happen to be on Facebook, thanks for all those comments. I appreciate it. We've got people watching, so that's a good sign. But Donna was just sharing how this whole show came about a little bit. For those of you that didn't hear, Donna and I have been doing Inquiring Minds for coming up, well, just over a year now, right? All right.
Yeah, 60 shows.
60 shows. It's crazy. We yep, everybody is now hearing you. So this is good. So we are off to the races. We have been good friends for over 15 years. We've always been having these conversations over the years. And we decided, why don't we flip on the camera and actually record some of these? And so up to this point, it has been a podcast slash video show that we've been doing with a wide variety of topics and questions that we get posed every week, and just have a great amount of fun having these conversations, very insightful conversations that Donna and I have been having. And this is our first live stream, so we're super excited. Apologies to those of you that were having some difficulties with the audio, but it seems to have been cleared up, so we are good to go. So today, the topic that we wanted to share was uncommon connections. And so we kind of gave you a little bit of glimpse of that. But Donna, maybe give the audience, a little bit of a perspective of how you and I actually, sort of decided we were doing the executive blog thing together, but how we actually got to having conversations and actually how we started and struck up this friendship.
It was interesting because Steve commented on the first book, If Harry Potter Ran General Electric. That was Tom Morris's book, and made some kind of comment saying, like, who's going to want to listen to what he has to say, but anyway, he's going to say it. And I offline gave him a 2x4 to the side of the head saying, I want to hear what you have to say. And, no self-deprecating comments allowed in the conversation. And he just laughed. And we continued the conversation online and offline over the years because our viewpoints are so different. And that goes to the uncommon relationships, the connections that we make, because seriously, like John Spence joked when I interviewed him for my book, because I love what he does. He wrote me back, or actually in our conversation, we had known each other for like the 15 years. He said, I bet you we're going to end up meeting in an airport because the two of us were traveling so much. We continue having a relationship, but we have never met in person. And, years ago, you just didn't forge a relationship, an ongoing relationship with somebody that you weren't going to meet.
That's true.
It was
Yeah.
a different field of practice or doing different kinds of work. And that just didn't happen with this group because we did stay in touch and we do different work to some extent. And we figured out that the overlap and the ripple effect, to use Steve's ripple, really goes well beyond us, our work, and our geographic location. And 15 years ago, people used to say to me, how could you still be friends with people in Australia that you met when you taught them? And I said, because the connections are there. You make a connection and you always have this enriching experience every time you speak to the individual, which is, what I feel about Steve and our conversations. So it's, it's something that I'm going to invite you to look at. What are the people that you meet along the way that could incredibly enrich your life that you wouldn't even consider having an ongoing relationship with, work or otherwise, unless you had to, work on it at least to get it going.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, the interesting thing, and you touched on it, right? You sort of set the rules of engagement pretty early with you, because you would ask me some very important questions, and I would have this way, and it was more of a defense mechanism, if you will, right? And sort of a level of insecurity, I think, to a certain degree, that I really had not accomplished, yet what I had hoped to accomplish in my career, and didn't feel like I was on the same playing field as you and many of the other people in executive blogs. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know how I got roped into this thing, but I'm the guy that, I don't think you really want to hear from me. And you were like, we need to have a call. And we have the call, and you're like, you're just, I think you think you're trying to be funny, but you're taking all your power away. And I really appreciated that at that point, because being the youngest of four kids, I was kind of the afterthought in a lot of ways. And so I often found my way of sort of contributing or getting noticed was by humor. And sometimes self-effacing humor is always an easy play, because you're the perfect subject matter for that. But I recognize when I also start to struggle with my confidence, that often becomes the default mechanism. And I remember you and I just having this great conversation. And you're like, look, if we're going to be friends, you're going to have to figure this out, because I don't have time for this. You've got to come to the table and, know that you have the right words and the right power. And it blows me away that, all these years that, we've been able to have these conversations ongoing in support of one another's business. But then at every time that we do it, you and I really come out on the other end of those conversations with some solid gold. And it's just been such an amazing experience for me personally. And so when you approached me about doing this show, it was like, yeah, I mean, I am in all day long. I mean, this would be great, because I'm going to learn so much and have such a great experience. But that's the whole purpose of the title of the show, when we were trying to come up with what it was that we wanted to talk about. Inquiring minds, about the heavy conversations, the difficult situations we deal with in our personal and our professional life. what we're looking at as individuals, and how to tackle those topics in a way that leaves people A, wanting more, and B, really wanting to dive into, ask those questions of themselves and of their, their families, or their, their personal or professional networks.
And I always look at who is in my life. I have a new TED fellow that I just started working with, and I warned her. I said, you should know, like I tell the other fellows, I just want to adopt you all because you're just such amazing young men and women, and our relationships go well beyond the core year that we're supposed to be working with these amazing men and women. Some of them I've been friends with for 10 years, as long as I've been working with TED, and continuing to support their work. I learned so much through them. These are relationships with people who are the global game changers, because their projects, their work is beyond belief. They come up with ideas that I just look at them going, I can't believe that you just said that, or I can't believe that that's possible. That's my life. And I look at Steve. It's a funny side anecdote, and apologies to any Canadians who might be on listening who supported the Conservative Party way back when. This isn't about the Conservative Party, it's about who the leader was. And you could guess who his name was, Stephen Harper. I started getting emails from people saying, why are you working with the Prime Minister? And I'm going, I'm not. And then I looked at Steve's picture next to our Prime Minister's picture, and at the time they looked a lot alike. So I wrote him one day. He didn't know I was having these side conversations, probably didn't know who our Prime Minister was at the time. And I said, you need to change your name and get a haircut. And I get this answer back, why? I said, because every time your name shows up in my inbox and there's a little picture there, they think the Prime Minister's writing me, and it's causing me no end of grief. So, all these side conversations were unbelievable. The point that I'm trying to make here, though, is I approached the world from the perspective of every person that I come across knows something about life and living that I don't. And I cannot wait to hear their stories. I cannot wait to connect the dots to see how what I'm doing in my life connects with theirs in some way, shape, or form. Number one. Number two, once I meet some of these amazing men and women, the first thing that goes to my mind is this person needs to meet this person who needs to meet this person, because there's a synergy there that they will discover the minute they get on the phone or Zoom together. And those uncommon connections I make every single day. It's absolutely incredible. And that is what my gift is outward, is to be able to connect people with those that they never would have considered meeting or interacting with, but I have experience of. And how often do you do that? Like you say to yourself, oh, this person reminds me of so-and-so. Boy, this person would be amazing, mind meld with another person that I know. However, you forget about it and you don't necessarily connect the two. That is something that I think could be all our gifts to the world, is to create those uncommon connections that somebody else wouldn't think of making or having, which is why I love LinkedIn, because it's a way to connect the dots through technology and see what are other people doing, where are they working, what am I reading that I never imagined possible, and I want to dig in and learn more. So, this is a fantastic opportunity for you all to even see who else is responding on the call, and what are people saying that you could contribute back to us that we could share with our audience.
Yeah, Cynthia Berg just commented on Facebook, it needs to be a daily practice. It's something that you have to, put some intention behind, right? And I think one of the critical factors is you have to be open to that. And how many of us are so closed off to the possibilities because we're so, focused on our own craziness and our own life that we miss a lot of those great connections that we could make. And I'm a big believer. I tell my Ripple audience all the time that, your best connections are going to cross your path at exactly the time that they should. And you just need to be sure that you're looking up and looking out to be able to take advantage of them and leverage them when they happen. And so, I find that, you know, one of the interesting things between you and me when we first connected and started having conversations is we had this ongoing dialogue for years before we actually met in person, right? You know, and we had this great interaction, but yet there was this real great synergy because we were open to it and we didn't come in with preconceived notions or expectations. We just kind of let it evolve the way that it really needed to evolve. And so that's a big factor I think that, you know, people can take away as, you know, in today's world, it seems like we're so driven to get immediate results or get something specifically, out of each interaction. And sometimes those great connections will evolve over time, like they did with us, right?
That's it. You know, I was thrilled when I did my keynote for Mind Your Own Business conference in Austin, and I was able to actually meet them in person
Yeah,
for
yeah.
the first time. And you know, that's the thing. You live in Texas, I live in Canada, in Ottawa, and how often will we meet in person? It doesn't stop us whatsoever.
No.
And I thank Cynthia for her comment, because I also want to say it's an in the moment thing.
Yes.
Day to day, absolutely. But in the moment, when it occurs to you, that's when you either take a note to connect somebody or look into something that somebody's doing in the moment. Otherwise, you will forget it. You know, I set intentions every single day. My intention always is to be open to the people that I come across in my life. And, you know, I find I am so blessed with the people that I get to work with, many of whom become friends over time, well beyond our working relationship. And that to me is priceless, because they're just amazing people that I come across through, you know, a business context. But how do I take that further and enrich my life at the same time? That's the first thing. The second thing is, you know, to look at the world of competition. You know, we live in such a competitive
Yeah.
world that sometimes we're afraid that if we connect one person with another, then we are literally giving somebody else an opportunity that might take one away from us. And that's what I hear from people who really are competitive, that, you know, if they introduce Steve to somebody else, then they might go off and do a project together or take an idea and fly with it. And then what happens, right?
Yeah.
You know, I'm no longer as important in the equation, or he just might go further with this other individual rather than, you know, gifting that connection to see what emerges.
Yeah.
You know, I find I am so lucky. There's, you know, somebody else that I met through the Conversation Among Masters group. First one, like the inaugural CAM conference, that was by invitation only. And I met Dave Lent there. And he just continues to blow me away because he's working on the Keys to Mastery. And I said, I'm in. Like, you know, this is something I want to work on. And again, met him, I think it's 15 years ago.
Yep.
That's a magic number in my life, I think.
I think so.
Lived in California, and, you know, the synergy is unbelievable. But you have to also nurture it and work on it and reach out and say, you know what, I'm thinking of you. Let's look at what we might do together. I think we also are so busy that we hesitate to do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. Cynthia asked a follow-up question. How do you get over being disappointed by connection attempts that just don't go anywhere? And for our audience, Donna can't actually see the questions, so that's why I'm posting them up here and then reading them to her. So, but how do you get over being disappointed by a connection attempt that just doesn't go anywhere, Donna?
If it doesn't go anywhere, I'm not disappointed if I tried.
Yeah.
I'm disappointed if I didn't try and it didn't go anywhere. And it's on me. If I tried and it didn't go anywhere, and that's happened, you know, where I thought there was a connection or a synergy, and it turns out there just wasn't. That's perfectly fine. It's also a barometer to tell you what to put your energy and your time and attention to.
Yeah.
That you can only do so much. You only have time for so much. So, you know, that actually is a gift to say, you know what, I wish them well. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It doesn't mean that I'm going to stop trying it with other people. So,
but, you know, my take on that for Cynthia is, you know, maybe the connection attempt didn't work now, but it might in the future, right? And I always try and have an attitude that you want to leave every interaction better than you found it. And so sometimes a connection that doesn't go anywhere now just based on how you respectfully allowed it to, sort of just play out. And if it didn't go anywhere, like you were saying, a collaboration or working on a project together or whatever might, it just doesn't come to fruition. Leave that person better for knowing you just in that moment than when before they found you. And you'll never imagine, but more often than not, at least in my life, those things have come back full circle years down the road. Like I remember we were like, you were calling on me and talking to me about, something that was, you were trying to do for your business, and we just didn't have the opportunity. But now I'm at a company that I need what you have. Or, I remember our interaction over coffee and how great the timing was, the time was, but we just didn't have anything of value to exchange at that point. But now we do, or potentially, now we can, revisit. Those opportunities do have a tendency to come back. In fact, I've had business relationships that have come out of nowhere because somebody remembers that one interaction. So I always like to tell people, like, your point, Donna, is perfect. It's, I tried, and I want to try with my whole heart and my whole mind while I'm doing it. But at the same time, I want to leave that person with the best possible impression, because you never know when they might bubble up again in your life.
So I'll share with you an uncommon and unexpected collaboration. I taught in Australia, I think it was 6 years in a row, master, level practitioners. These weren't beginners, and I just loved every second of it. And this is a long time ago. Fast forward, I get a phone call like on a Friday afternoon from somebody who I went to high school with, and I won't tell you how long ago that was. And our kids went to grade school together, so that is also a very long time ago. And he was contacted by somebody that he was working on a project with out of Australia, who said, you need somebody closer on the ground, not like 14 and a half hours difference in time, to help with this file. And he said, you know anybody? And he said, Donna Karlin.
Yeah.
He stopped and he said, Donna Karlin? So he says, you've heard of her? He says, I went to high school with her. And he called me up and asked me to get involved in this file. And I said, happy to have the conversation. And it's just, taken off from there. I mean, this is an impression that you leave, something of knowledge that you impart on somebody, that they say, this is the person who can best address this. And you never know, as Steve said, when it's going to occur. This is many, many years later. I think probably 9 or 10 years since I've been to Adelaide. And, that's a long time. Another person after 7 years contacted me because she was with a company that they needed my expertise to fix something. And this was in Chicago, and I got on a plane to have that conversation. So it happens, sometimes not overnight.
Yep.
Or somebody will say, I remember what you said when you spoke to our group, and that has stuck with me ever since. You might never know the impact that you have.
Well,
you shouldn't try to have it.
That's exactly right. And you're going to think this was a setup for this next comment, but it wasn't, because you can't see the comment. So this is just sort of hilarious. Dustin Amy, who I went to high school with, is on with us today. And he said, quote, finding those connections right when you're supposed to, unquote. Steve, I've learned a lot from you over the times. I now own an AV company because I recognize the opportunity from a ripple. And so that was perfect setup for that comment. And thank you for sharing that, Dustin. That's just pretty ironic timing for sure. But like you said, you just never know. And those things will come up, and it's all about how you make the impact with those people and, that cross your path. And if you come with a giving heart, and you're willing to, have the ability to listen to somebody and just be with them in the moment, be present. We talk a lot about that on past episodes we've done for the podcast, being engaged, being committed, asking the right questions. Those things all lead to a deeper, more meaningful engagement or conversation in the moment. And you never know what they pick up from you or what you pick up from them that you can apply later on that may come back and be an opportunity to have that conversation. I know that I've spent time with people that, I just couldn't see anything that we could do necessarily together, but because I wasn't just going to let the time elapse, I was going to, I wanted to be fully present. I would ask a lot of questions, and that's kind of my thing. and I eventually will pick something up that I know that could be a benefit. I remember one guy that had just recently moved from Minneapolis to Austin, and it was one of the conversations that we had that I'm like, oh, I know exactly who you need to be talking to. There's somebody in my network that I think could benefit from knowing you. They went off, like you said, kind of did their own thing. I wasn't looking for any expectation of return of any point. But at the end of the day, he's working a really very lucrative corporate job now because of that one interaction that led to one additional interaction. And it was kind of off to the races. Now, do I worry about credit? No. Do I worry that, they're not sitting around thinking about, oh, all because of Steve, got this great job? No, because the reality is he has brought more back into my life in various times that I never expected. And that's the beauty of what we're talking about. You look for those uncommon connections and you try and add value when and where you can. And you'll be surprised in how they come back to you in ways, you sometimes can't imagine.
I'd love to hear, if the people who are logged in have met people that they didn't expect to meet who stayed in their lives.
Yeah.
And the impact that they had, because that would be really cool to hear. It happens. Ray, my husband, tells me that, it's 2 degrees of separation in my life because I'm connected to everyone,
Yep.
which is not really true, but in his world, he sort of feels that that's so. And how do you honor them now? Like, how do you continue those relationships and honor what you have from those relationships that enrich your life? And what is the learning and the teaching because of it? How do you encourage other people to do the same? It's so much easier in this day and age, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the nice thing is, and like you touched on it earlier with LinkedIn and the different social networks, it is easier to stay at least up to date somewhat with what people are doing. So even though you may have made a connection with someone, but don't really know where or how to take it to the next level, it does become easier if you pay attention and you are intentional about that. And so, like Donna suggested, if anybody's on there that has, a story they'd like to put up or, share with us by way of comment, just a connection. I know for a fact, I have a friend of mine that I knew from sort of the startup community in Austin that had met somebody that they didn't get along with right off the bat. And they ended up getting married like 4 years later because at the time they were both hard charging entrepreneurs trying to do their thing. And they were both very ego driven in terms of what they were sort of displaying out there to the world. But then they ended up getting a drink one night after a meeting we had all attended. They found they had a lot more in common. And, obviously, as they say, the rest is history. But, sometimes you have to allow yourself to sort of look beyond where you don't see compatibility to just be open to the possibility that maybe there's compatibility in some other level at some other time.
That's it. And funnily enough, when I was looking at through LinkedIn to invite some people to today's show, I'm seeing so and so retired. I'm like, what the heck? What do you mean retired? They have so much to give. I'm not going to let them get away with being retired. So I made a list of those that popped up because I don't always see their status changes. I'm connected to a lot of people through my classes and my work and everything else. So it's just so funny when that pops up. I go, oh, seriously, willing to retire? I want to know what that means exactly and what they're doing to still contribute because they're amazing people.
Absolutely.
This list of people to get in touch with after this to see what's going on here.
That's great. Well, I think maybe one of those might be Ron Caden, who just said, ask Donna Karlin, what is the role of kindness and food in building business relationships?
So Ron is on. That's wonderful.
Yeah, he came in on via Facebook. So.
Okay. So Ron is our neighbor across the street, Ron and Karen, who I love. You talk about the best neighbors in the world to have. They're never allowed to move. They're like the best neighbors. So we've been here for 36 years where we live now.
Wow.
And they've lived across the street from us for 36 years. And, I needed to stay in touch with my neighbors during COVID just to make sure everyone was okay. And, we were hit by a tornado, as you know, when our neighborhood was really badly impacted, and we have each other's backs in this, excuse the pun, neck of the woods.
In the
We
woods.
used to have woods, and now not so many woods since the tornado. And so the food part is bringing cookies, fresh bread, or whatever to my neighbors like once a week, just to check in, see how they're doing, and give them some goodies to eat. And I do that to some of my clients as well. I'll bring in a birthday cake if they're local, obviously. I don't get on a plane with a birthday cake.
Yeah.
And just surprise them, because food is, I was a trained chef, so that's a way for me to give back. It's just so funny how people look at connection and relationship, and I can't imagine living anywhere else because I wouldn't have Ron and Karen across the street from us.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's great.
it is.
Well, Christina Brewer, she just put a comment on Facebook. Steve used to yell at me, ... build me up, ? No, I really have known Steve more than half of my life. And while I often wonder why he keeps letting me ask him questions about life, he hasn't given up on our friendship yet. So I appreciate that, Christina. I will never give up on you. I used to coach Christina in soccer, and as an adult, she still thinks I'm cool enough to hang out with, but she's in Spain. And so she's tuning in from Spain. So we don't get to see each other in the physical world all the time, but we do get to see each other, online, and have stayed in contact and become great friends. And so I'm super proud of her and what she is doing with her life. But it's like you said, those are the things that are pretty amazing. Those actually, if you look back on all the uncommon connections that have evolved into something, I think the word that really comes to my mind is gift, right? Looking beyond what you might have kind of, sort of categorize that connection as originally. You could easily say Ron was just a neighbor, or Dustin was just a dude I knew in high school, or Christina was just somebody I coached in soccer. But at the end of the day, it's those things that you look at what they really mean to you in terms of the impact that they've had in your life, or what they've contributed to your success, or just supporting you in times of need. Those things really are truly gifts.
And I'll invite you to look at the word uncommon. And there's a reason why that word sticks with me, because a common relationship is one that you have, like the neighbors that walk by that or you know them by their dog's name, because everyone in this neighborhood pretty much has a dog, or babysits a dog, or has something to do with a dog. But I'm just smiling because the uncommon part is what I'm focusing on here. It's like having the Cadens as our neighbors, and how we cherish them as neighbors is uncommon. It's not a regular occurrence. That is key. Having family members that are our best friends as well as family, that to me is uncommon. Having clients who become dear friends is uncommon, because I know so many practitioners who do their job and then they're out of there and they never see the individual again because they don't forge the relationship. And that relationship is just as important as anything else to me. So, what is uncommon that you could grasp onto? And that's the reason why I look at it as a gift and cherish it, because it isn't common.
That's
it
right.
isn't something that I take for granted, or is regular, in other words. It's just unbelievable. And some of the people I've met through you, Steve, are just extraordinary human beings, on your Ripple, hearing what people have done, and being ex-military, or what they're doing now, and what they're bringing to the table. They leave a lasting imprint.
Yeah.
I might not see them like you do, because a lot of them are in your neck of the woods, but they've left an imprint. Like your friend Remy, like he's just a riot.
Yeah.
Meeting him, just some of the people that I've come across. That's the other thing. Connecting with Steve and staying connected with Steve. I've been invited to meet some of the people in his life who've impacted me. And some of what I've learned from them on his Ripple, the 8-minute Ripple, is what I bring to my world here in Ottawa and in other parts of the world. So the ripple effect is huge, especially when you forge those strong relationships.
So again, I think we're going to have to rename this show Donna Karlin's ESP, because right before you even mentioned him, he had just left a comment. Ramey says it's all about connecting and making a difference. But I swear, people, she cannot see these comments, so she's not. I mean, it's just you're 2 for 2. That's pretty amazing. But yeah, he's right. It's all about connecting and making a difference, and contributing when and where you can in somebody's life. I was going to say to everybody listening to, when you think about uncommon connections, look at them from a perspective of what can I learn from that person? Kind of like you touched on at the very beginning, Donna. What can I learn from this person, because they have experiences and have gone through things in both their personal and their professional life that I haven't, as have you, right? And in the sort of the counterpoint to them. But ask yourself the question, where can I be of value to these people? What can I do to contribute and add something to their life in some special way? And one of the questions that I'm kind of known for on everything, I put it on emails, I ask people when I have face-to-face meetings with them, and even people that I've just met, the question I always ask is, how can I help you? And you get that question, you often get that look like, oh, what's the angle? Why are you doing it? But really, at the end of the day, if you're consistent about it and you continue to do it, people will eventually be like, that's coming from a place of genuineness, right? And when you've taken the time to make your connection with that person, especially someone that's an uncommon connection, and you're still willing to, end every interaction with them by asking that question and saying, look, I may not have the expertise or the knowledge or the right ideas or the right answers for what you might need, but I might know somebody who does. And the value there can be significant. And I can tell you several uncommon connections that I've had that are truly cherished connections to me now, came from them actually responding to that question, and not really expecting anybody to do anything about it, but then you do, and it's kind of amazing.
One of the things I started doing, I've been speaking more over the last year, although through Zoom, not having to get on a plane to go somewhere. And I have so many people who have questions at the end, to see how could they apply what I said to their immediate world, lives, etc. And so what I started doing was having 15-minute laser conversations with them afterwards, because I'm not going to be working with everyone that's shows up to one of my speaking gigs. If there's 100, 200, 300, 400 people on the call, that's not happening. But if I have 10, 15 who have these really in-depth questions that are profound and would be great to have a short laser conversation about them, I offer them 15 minutes. No strings, no charge, just to say, come with this one specific question.
Yeah.
Not 15, that can be addressed in 15 minutes, and we will deep dive. So my first question is, what will make the best use of your time right now?
I love that question. Yeah.
We will dive in, and at the end, I say, what did you get out of this that you could actually apply and hit the floor running with? So I know that something resonated and it will help them in some way, shape, or form. I've made a connection. They will remember not only the conversation and the content, but the fact that I've offered them that 15 minutes, which is usually unheard of with keynote speakers. And I did that also with the Mind Your Own Business conference. So many people wanted one-on-one conversations with me after. They actually booked a 2-hour session for whoever out of the 600 people that were there wanted a coaching conversation as a group. And I had like 200 people show up, and we just had a conversation that had so much impact. I'm still getting emails from people. So figure out how you could touch more than just one-on-one, and how is it that you can make a connection with a group, a cause, something of meaning to you.
Yeah.
Your religious organization, or your community organization, or somewhere where people are craving connection, especially now post-COVID. And to be able to just listen, give of yourself, share your wisdom, because it's not only invaluable, it's needed so desperately.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, well said, and great advice for sure. Well, we have one more comment from Cynthia Berg, and we were talking about being unusual and doing things outside the box. And she said, handwritten letters are uncommon and so appreciated. So you meet somebody, and maybe you don't, it's not obvious or apparent where you guys may take that connection, but one of the things that you can do is actually, do Cynthia's suggestion, which is to handwrite a card and just say, look, I really enjoyed meeting you. I really, appreciated the time that you gave me. I liked getting to know you. I, certainly hope our paths cross again in the future. There's no set expectation. I have turned so many of those uncommon interactions, those uncommon connections into very valuable friends because I've taken the time to do those things. And it is pretty amazing how people respond, especially today in a tech driven society where it's so much easier for us to just text, hey, thanks for that coffee, or shoot a quick email. So impersonal. And yet you take the time to actually put a little bit of effort and into putting your thoughts into a handwritten note. You really will reap the rewards and benefits from it. You will definitely make an impression without question. Debbie Sunny Brome said, I love handwritten cards. So she loved that comment as well. So, I think everybody does. I mean, when you get them, it's so unusual to get them these days. They really differentiate and set you apart. And in their mind, you're really doing something uncommon, which really helps them really think of you at a completely different level than everybody else they might meet with.
Uncommon? Oh my goodness. Be able to open up a mailbox and not get either a bill or a flyer telling me I belong in an old age home. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. A TED, the last TED I went to, like the in-person TED that I went to, because it went virtual for a while. That's what they did. There was an organization that had these really cool postcards that you could fill out, and they mailed them for you just to show people what they mean to you. So I remember I did one to my mom, and I did one to a couple of people, like really close people in my life, and I sent them out, and they got them beyond. They actually purposely delay them so that I'm already home by the time they get the mail. They don't expect that I'm sending a postcard from California or whatever else. And it took them aback. They just absolutely were not expecting to get that. That's a great idea, Cynthia. I am going to adopt that because I have stationery that is sitting in a cupboard right now.
We got to put it to work. Dustin Amy just said, I just got a handwritten thank you card a few days ago. And you're right. It meant so much, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah, that is a Cynthia. Thank you.
Yeah. See, that's great. And then Debbie just said, ripple on with the celebratory party hat and a star. So I'm not an emoji guy, so I don't know what those means, but and Cynthia just said, I'll send you my address, Donna, so you can get started. She'll do it. That's awesome. Well, one of the things that I did, I this past year, actually over Christmas, I had a desire to get a old typewriter. And so I bought one from 1934, which is the year my dad was born, and got this typewriter. It's an old Royal typewriter, so there was just something unique. And I had seen a story about what Tom Hanks was doing, collecting typewriters and kind of this approach. And I thought, if I'm going to be a writer, literally, I should have a typewriter, just if nothing else for the symbolism. But I started actually using the typewriter to actually typewrite things out to special connections and friends. And I would either be a quote or something that would sort of catch their attention. And you'd be amazed at the response I got from that, because that's so uncommon. You could type something and you could print it on your laser printer and send it. Doesn't have nearly the cachet that, somebody sitting down to a manual typewriter actually has. And I have opened up so many great connections, next level conversations with these connections, because I took the time to do something like that. So another example of, ways of doing something uncommon to really differentiate yourself. But it is really, and it's been fun every single time, because I'm a horrible typist and I make no apologies for it. And so I just X out what I screwed up, because there will be several. And, but people get it. And I have one good friend that actually framed it, because she said it was so unusual. she said, I want to show my team that this is what you do when you want to show somebody they're important to you. You take the time to do something unique and different. So handwritten card, go get a, old typewriter, do something a little outside the box. And who knows what you may do for that uncommon connection to turn them into something so much more significant.
I have a typewriter teapot. Does that count?
I have no idea what that is. Is that a Canadian thing? I don't.
No, it's a teapot that looks like a typewriter.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
It is. Our daughters bought it for me when I published my first book.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that was really cool. So that's a proud display in our kitchen. I look at handwriting. I write in notebooks because I don't want to lose the skill of writing.
Yeah.
Because I type so much. And I look at a lot of the kids, and there you go. Yeah, who just lost the ability to write. They just don't write, and it's really rusty. So it's a skill that we're going to lose if we don't use it as well. I know that this conversation certainly isn't a deep conversation like a lot of our podcasts are, because we look at very relevant topics that we discuss. And I look at connections and the uncommon connections that we've made over time. And because it brings joy to even think of it, and how blessed I am to have such amazing people in my life. Mr. Harper, unfortunate last name, but what am I going to do with that? Seriously, it is a lighthearted conversation to have.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that it's any less important or profound for us to be reminded that everything in life is about connection, relationship, interaction, and what you give with every conversation, every handwritten card, every email, every text, and what, one of the questions we asked in one of our shows, how do you want that person to feel at the end of the conversation?
Yeah.
And, that's what it's all about. You could leave them with the feeling that this relationship is a huge gift.
Absolutely.
Or you could leave them with the feeling that if I never see this person again, it'll be too soon. So you choose, kind of thing. And I also am very grateful for those who have logged in, for this show and have commented.
Yep.
And the more that comment and pick on Steve, the happier I am, just it means a lot that I'm able to do this show with Steve. And for us to have these conversations every week. And, now that you're on and it's our first live show, I invite you to share with us now, later, through our Facebook group, whatever. What do you want us to talk about that's important to you? Yeah. You want to make it personal. Like, what is important to you? What if you could find out more about something that you are curious about or struggle with? Anything like that really will help you see that we are interested.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we encourage you to certainly comment here or on the rebroadcast. I mean, this is going to go out on Facebook. It'll be on our YouTube. Obviously, it'll be hopefully living on LinkedIn right now. So if you want to put those comments, we'll be watching and paying attention. We encourage you to go look for Inquiring Minds on the podcast platforms, because we've had a tremendous amount of topics that we've covered. Like you said, 60 odd conversations that we've had around this. They're short, sort of powerful little episodes, kind of scrunched between, 12 and 18 minutes for the most part. But they are like, and I'm part of it, but I learn something every single time, because it's just amazing what that dialogue, drives home, and what further questions and desire to have additional conversations the Inquiring Minds topics really bring to mind. I have to tell you this though, Donna, before we, plug anything else. Cynthia says, sing glitter with the card to make an extra special impression. And then Sunny actually said, "I'm going to get some blank cards today. Check." And she said, "You can call me Sunny," with the happy face. And have a great day. Thank you for sharing the ripple, which is pretty awesome. Thank you for joining us today, Donna. If we want to give people a better perspective how they could get involved with the show, in addition to maybe leaving a comment here or on any of the channels that they might be checking in or listening to for this particular episode or live stream, I should say. How could they do that? How could they get involved and be aware of upcoming shows and what we're doing?
Well, join our Facebook group, Inquiring Minds, with Donna, Karlin, and Steve Harper. We're on YouTube. We're on all the podcast channels. LinkedIn will post what our shows are, so you can find out there, and through our website, ripplecentral.com for Steve, and donnakarlin.com is my portal site. You can find out more about our social media and everything there. So we post it on a regular basis. And just write a comment. Let us know what you'd like us to discuss, what you've heard that has really had impact for you, because we really are interested. We want to know if our shows are resonating and how we could do it better or more of, and what it is that's on your mind.
Absolutely. Well, we just got a comment from an unidentified Facebook user. So I've never seen this before, but it doesn't show a profile, but it says, "Joining late, but I agree, Donna, that relationships are important and need to always be validated. I've made more of an effort to tell people in my life how grateful and blessed I feel to have them in my life." And then they followed on with, "Such an easy conversation between you two. I almost feel like I'm eavesdropping." So that's fantastic. And Sunny says, yeah, I don't know because it doesn't show me, but whoever it is, maybe you can drop your name in there because one of us will for sure know you. But Sunny actually said socializing again after COVID would be a great topic to cover for a future episode. So that's a good one for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear around that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I believe to a certain degree, because I'm the relationship guy, those rules of engagement have changed relative to, how you did it may not necessarily be the way you should be doing it going forward. Oh, and it looks like the Facebook user, it was from Grace Discipio, and Ray was the second. Oh, so one was from Ray and one was from Grace. They must know you.
Well, Ray is my husband.
Yeah, well, I know he would.
He knows me. And Grace is our friend who lives here in Ottawa.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Well, it's unusual that they were showing as blank on the Facebook or just showing Facebook user, but we're glad to have them. That was awesome. So, Ray said, so Ray's comment was, "Such an easy conversation between you two. I almost feel like I'm eavesdropping." So he probably feels like that every Wednesday morning when we record. Oh, that's awesome. Well, we definitely appreciate you guys being a part of this. This was our first ever live stream. Sorry about the audio problems at the very beginning, but somehow magically we recovered. So everything works out the exact way that it's supposed to. And Donna, this was just a lot of fun. I think we'll probably end up doing more live streams in the future, but I want to thank you for the honor and the opportunity to be a part of the show and have these conversations, because they're so powerful and they're so needed right now. And I'm just grateful to be your co-host on this.
Same here, right back at you.
All right. Well, you take care. Everybody have a great, fantastic rest of your day. And don't forget to leave us some comments on any of the topics you'd like us to cover in the very near future. But we will be back. We release an episode tomorrow for Inquiring Minds. They release at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Because Donna's in the future by an hour from where I am. So she gets to make the call when they release, but definitely look for tomorrow's episode and then go back and look at all the other episodes. We've got a ton of them. So we would love for you to go back, participate. And like Donna said, join our Facebook group and become a part of the conversation. And Sunny just said, "Thank you both," with prayer hands. So we appreciate you joining, Sunny. Thanks for everybody joining. And you guys have a great rest of your day.